G'day guys, how's it going? Adelaide 500 has just finished, which means the Supercars season is done for yet another year. And I just wanted to look at the 2023 Supercars calendar that was announced shortly beforehand, and I had actually started doing a video. I'd spent about 2 hours editing a video about the 2023 Supercars Championship, but I guess I won't finish it now because this has actually been announced. So the inaugural season of the Gen 3 era, the 2023 Repco Supercars Championship, will be contested over 12 rounds. The Gen 3 Ford Mustang and Camaro will first race on the streets of Newcastle. The season will then end on Adelaide. For the first time since 2019, there will be multiple endurance races, which is big, multiple endurance races. So it's a win for fans. Endurance racing will return to Sandown in September. We're getting the Sandown 500 back. Obviously, that's something huge. A lot of people have been asking for that since, even into COVID, people wanting, more than just Bathurst. Last year, this year, a lot of people felt like there should be some sort of precursor. It didn't necessarily have to be Sandown, but obviously Sandown is a fan favorite round. So it's no surprise that they've brought it back. I do think that decision has been accelerated by the incident involving Goddard, that a lot of people came down to really decided it was down to lack of experience before the race, getting somebody in that main game drive when they haven't necessarily been driving that car throughout the year. This year we obviously had the co-driver's session, but that's one session across the whole year before you get to the big mountain. It's not enough, and it feels like Supercars have agreed and they've finally brought it back. And then the October 5th to 8th event marks the 60th anniversary of the Great Race, which was first held in 1963. So obviously Bathurst on the calendar, who would have guessed? One thing to note about the Sandown 500, it will not be the retro round. That's pretty disappointing in my eyes. I know the retro round is a fan favorite. I'm not the only one who thinks that, and through years gone by, it's been what makes Sandown perhaps the most exciting round after Bathurst. Obviously the 500, it's a good track, but the retro round just elevated it up something special, seeing all the unique liveries that came out of it. And now I think that leaves only Darwin as the sort of round where liveries change. Obviously liveries are changed for Bathurst as well, but not nearly to the extent that they were in Sandown. So yeah, we've lost out there. And they are also thinking of getting rid of the qualifying races for Sandown, the good old 20 lap sprints where you had each driver participate in one race each for the qualifying, which, people are divided on that one. I think it's a personal loss, but there are people who don't believe that, so, But here's the calendar. So we have Newcastle first on March the 10th to the 12th, then the Melbourne 400. That date couldn't be arranged, that one's out of our hands, that's Formula 1. So March 30th to April the 2nd. The Perth Super Sprint, not the Super Night, is on April 28th to the 30th. So there's about a month gap between those two races. The Tasmania Super Sprint from May 19th to the 21st. Better, so another betting sponsor, which I'm very against betting sponsors, but that's neither here nor there. The Darwin Triple Crown, it's June 16th to 18th. Event will be broadcast live on Foxtel, KO and the 7 Network is what those two asterisks means. The single asterisk means that it's got Super 2 and Super 3. NTI Townsville 500, that's back, that's good. July 7th to 9th, obviously it was there last year, but it's always good to see the Townsville 500, the 2-race format. The Sydney Super Night, it's the night format either way, July 28th to the 30th. OTR Super Sprint at the Bend, August 18th to the 20th. The Sandown 500, it's back, it's good, September 15th to the 17th. Repco Bathurst 1000, October 5th to 8th, obviously we've already discussed that one. Boost Mobile Gold Coast 500, 27th to the 29th, and then ending on the Adelaide 500 on November the 23rd to the 26th. So that's your full calendar, all 12 races. And looking at it, just from looking at it, it's a very short calendar. There are some big gaps between races, like nearly a month between Melbourne and Perth. There's almost a month between Tasmania and Darwin. There's most races, there's only one per month. Some have two per month. You know, there's July, October, and April. But in my eyes, you could easily do 13 and 14 races a season, depending on how you laid it out. Obviously, Winton is gone from this calendar, which is huge. Firstly, Winton gone, fan favourite round. A lot of people went there, camped the weekend, enjoyed the racing there. I think it will still be a testing track. That's a big drop. Obviously, Phillip Island, Queensland Raceway, they haven't made it in again. I know a lot of fans want at least Phillip Island back. There is a fair support for Queensland Raceway, but as I'm led to believe after reading some information the other day, Phillip Island, it's a very expensive race to run with not enough fans going to make it a worthwhile venture. So that's obviously the reason why they're not going there. Queensland Raceway, can't say with utmost certainty, but I mean, it's not the most exciting racetrack, I will give it that. And then finally, obviously, no New Zealand, no Singapore. These things were sort of, Singapore especially was hyped up as being like, we're going international, we're going big, Supercars is going over. Not on the cards for 2023, at least this is provisional, but it appears to be sort of just set around maybe sponsors and all that. That's the only potential for change as far as I'm aware. But yeah, and then obviously no New Zealand. That's, I mean, New Zealand it has a special part in Supercars Championship. As much as this is an Australian championship, it owes a lot to New Zealand, especially when you consider our previous, I think, five previous championships being run by Kiwis. So like, and it's been known for at least like half a year that Pukekohe has been out of circulation for 2023. And Supercars have also looked at other tracks in the past. Hampton Downs is probably the biggest one they've looked at in the past. So it's a shame to not see any New Zealand races on the grid. If I was to adjust this differently, I think I'd probably knock the Perth Super Sprint back a fortnight and the Tasmania Super Sprint back another week, and probably sit a Hampton Downs race in around that Anzac Day time. Because I mean, obviously Anzac Day, Australia and New Zealand has that special connection, but it's just, it feels like it's a good spot to sit it in. There'll be a few weeks between the Melbourne 400 and the New Zealand race, which would make sense in my eyes, and it'd bring it up to a 13 race calendar. But then again, you could also do a double header, because one of the biggest things about New Zealand is logistics and money. It's expensive to run a race in New Zealand because the teams have to carry all their parts, their cars, and it's kind of hard to do that one race, just due to if your car is totaled, it's hard to fix it when you've got to take all these parts, you know. So if you have a crash in practice and then a crash in the first race, that could use up a lot of your part allocation, and you'll be looking for other teams' parts to use. Whereas if you were to do a double header, you might be able to take more parts, or there's more it's less expensive to run those two races over in New Zealand than it would be to sort of run two races separately, if that makes sense. Then again, I'm not in charge of logistics. I don't have the exact numbers on how much everything costs, so I can't say with 100% certainty that having two races or having even one race in April is feasible. But I am upset that New Zealand isn't on the calendar. Event formats and dates are subject to change. Obviously, I think I can't see any of this changing without some major event happening. Obviously, COVID happened, but yeah. A lot of this is just talking about the rounds, a lot of deals that have been struck, a lot of rounds that have been extended in the coming years. The final sprint will be at OTR at the Bend, so that means that the final four races, they're all, endurance races, 250k races, which I think is good in my eyes. It's 2,500 k's of racing across the last four races, it's very good. Winton Motor Raceway and Queensland Raceway will be used as testing circuits. I just feel like they could have used Winton, but then again, I'm not in management. I don't know why the reason hasn't been used, but there's got to be a good reason, I'm sure. A New Zealand event is not on the 2023 calendar, but Howard reiterated there is a focus to return in 2024 and beyond. Howard also said discussions have been held with several circuit promoters regarding other future international events. This is obviously in regards to New Zealand, but also Singapore, and I believe that Supercars, there was an article that came out earlier in the year, probably like 2 or 3 months ago, about how they were seeking to partner with F1 for more races. And I do believe Las Vegas was even one that was considered. There was the chance of going to the Middle East, the chance of going to America, but the biggest one was Singapore, since its proximity to Australia is so close. But the biggest thing that irks me about this is 12 races. I've got a few previous championships in 2020 where we had half the year where we weren't doing anything. The gap between the Australian Grand Prix and the next race was a good 3 months, and even then, these races, we finished in the 18th of October and we still had a 10-round season. We're doing 12 rounds, that's only 2 more than a round where we were locked down for half the year, more in some places. 2017, we had 14, we're going to pre-COVID years, we had 14 in 2017, I think we had 15 in 2019, and 16 in 2018. Even this year, I think we had 13 events. To me, it's just confusing as to why we have such few events. I do believe the drop-off of Winton was in regards to them wanting to sort of run less events across the season, but I don't know, in my eyes that's a bit confusing. It's neither here nor there, but that's not for me to say, I guess. Anyway, that's just my quick thoughts on the release of the 2023 Repco Supercars calendar. Okay, let's look at the 2018 calendar, right? We don't have the Phillip Island race anymore. We don't have Winton. We don't have Ipswich. And obviously we don't have New Zealand, so we don't have the Auckland Super Sprint. Those are 4 events. 3 of them could reasonably be on the calendar. And obviously a New Zealand race could also be on the calendar. I understand that the 16 race season, it's a lot. They probably don't want to hit that amount, but I don't see why a 14 race season isn't possible with, say, Winton and a New Zealand race. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed my rambling on this topic. As I said, I created a video. It was basically how I would run a calendar in 2023. I could still release that, obviously, but I had planned on releasing it before they'd released this calendar. I spent a good 2 days doing it, and then they released this ultimate troll by Supercars. But if you enjoyed, leave a thumbs up. If you have something to say, chuck it in the comments below. I do read over every comment, so if you have something to say, I'd like to hear it, especially if in regards to how you would improve it, what you want to see from Supercars, or if you even want to see me do that video in regards to my 2023 season. But thank you all for watching. Once again, have a good one.